Mistress tried to poison pregnant wife. Her comeback stunned the millionaire. She had the dream. A powerful husband, a luxury penthouse, and a baby on the way. But behind the designer curtains and morning tea was a silent war. One sip at a time. Someone was erasing her future. What happens when the perfect life is built on betrayal? When trust becomes poison and love turns lethal? This isn't just a story of survival, it's a masterclass in revenge. And when the truth explodes, it won't just ruin a marriage, it will bring down an empire. Let's dive into it. The morning sickness was a familiar, unwelcome guest. Celia Arden Lowell pressed a cool hand to her forehead, breathing through the wave of nausea as she gazed out the floor-to-ceiling window of her Mayfair townhouse. Below, London was a symphony of muted grays and hurried motion, a world away from the serene, climate-controlled silence of her life. At 28 and 5 months pregnant, she was the picture of success. Wife to the charismatic property mogul Adrian Lowell, and soon-to-be mother of his heir. Her life was a curated masterpiece. The minimalist furniture, the abstract art that cost more than her parents' house, the hushed footsteps of the staff. It was all part of the Lowell brand, and Adrian, with his tailored suits and easy, commanding charm, was the master artist. He loved her, she knew. He loved her in the way he loved his vintage Aston Martin or his Patek Philippe watch. She was a beautiful, precious acquisition that reflected his own impeccable taste. "Feeling all right, darling?" Adrian's voice, smooth as single malt scotch, wrapped around her. He placed his hands on her shoulders, his chin resting on the crown of her head. He smelled of expensive cologne and ambition. "Just the morning ritual," she murmured, leaning back into his embrace. The nausea was already subsiding. "Our little one is an early riser." "He's a Lowell," Adrian chuckled, his hands moving down to gently cup her burgeoning belly. "Born to take on the world. He always said, he." The doctors said it was too early to tell, but Adrian was a man who willed his desires into existence. Celia, who had grown up in a cozy, chaotic semi-detached in Kent, still found this level of certainty both dazzling and terrifying. A soft knock on the door preceded the entry of Isabel Vance. Isabel was Adrian's head of special projects, a title as sleek and ambiguous as she was. With hair the color of polished obsidian and a wardrobe of sharp architectural silhouettes, she was the yin to Celia's softer, more romantic yang. She had been Adrian's friend since their Oxford days, a fixture in his life long before Celia. "Good morning, you two," Isabel said, her smile bright, but never quite reaching her cool, calculating eyes. She carried a small, elegant tray. On it was a steaming mug of herbal tea. "Brought your special blend, Celia. The ginger and raspberry leaf should help with that." "Isabel, you're a lifesaver," Celia said, taking the mug. The warmth seeped into her cold hands. "Thank you." "Anything for the mother-to-be," Isabel replied, her gaze flicking to Adrian. "We need you and the heir in top form. Adrian, we have the preliminary zoning reports for the Canary Wharf project. They're challenging." "They're always challenging," Adrian said, his attention instantly shifting. He squeezed Celia's shoulder one last time. "Drink up, darling. I'll see you this evening. We have the Tate benefactors' dinner." And just like that, he was gone. A vortex of power and purpose with Isabel caught in his slipstream. Celia was left alone with the tea and the silence. She sipped it slowly. It had a slightly bitter, earthy aftertaste she'd grown accustomed to over the past few weeks, ever since Isabel had started preparing it for her. Isabel had explained it was a proprietary blend from a specialist herbalist in Hampstead, designed to strengthen the womb. Adrian had thought it was a wonderful gesture. Celia trusted Isabel. Or rather, she trusted Adrian's trust in Isabel. but sometimes a sliver of unease would prickle at her. The way Isabel looked at Adrian when she thought no one was watching. The way her perfectly manicured hand would linger on his arm a second too long. The way she seemed to know every detail of the Lowell Empire, while Celia was still learning the names of the board members. She dismissed it as pregnancy-induced paranoia. She was hormonal, insecure. Isabel was a friend. 2 hours later, the first cramp hit. It wasn't the dull ache of her expanding uterus. This was a sharp, vicious clenching deep in her abdomen. She gasped, dropping the book she was reading. Another cramp followed, more intense than the last. A cold sweat broke out across her skin. She stumbled to the bathroom, her legs trembling, and collapsed onto the cold marble floor as a wave of dizziness washed over her. The pain was blinding, a white-hot poker stabbing at her insides. She reached for her phone, her fingers fumbling with the screen. She managed to dial Adrian's personal assistant. "It's Celia," she whispered, her voice a reedy thread. "Something's wrong. The baby." The world dissolved into a cacophony of panicked voices, and then, mercifully, into darkness. She awoke to the rhythmic beeping of a machine and the sterile scent of antiseptic. A soft, warm hand was holding hers. It was Adrian. His face, usually so composed, was etched with worry. His suit jacket was off, his tie loosened. "Celia, can you hear me?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "The baby?" she croaked, her throat raw. The memory of the pain came rushing back, and a sob escaped her lips. "The baby's okay," he said quickly, squeezing her hand. "You're both okay. The heart rate is strong. The doctor said you had a severe uterine contraction, likely brought on by dehydration and stress. You gave us all a terrible scare." Relief, so potent it felt like a drug, flooded her body. She closed her eyes, tears leaking from the corners. "It hurt so much, Adrian. I thought, shh, don't think about it. You're safe now." Dr. Anya Sharma, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, entered the private room at the Portland hospital. She gave Celia a reassuring smile. "Well, Mrs. Arden Lowell, you certainly know how to make an entrance," she said gently. "We've run a full panel. Everything appears normal. Your blood pressure is a little high, but that's to be expected after an episode like this. We'd like to keep you overnight for observation, just to be safe." "What caused it?" Celia asked, her voice still shaky. "It felt violent. It's hard to say definitively," Dr. Sharma explained. "Sometimes, in the second trimester, the body can have these extreme reactions. Stress, diet, any number of things can be a trigger. Have you eaten or drunk anything unusual today?" Celia's mind immediately went to the tea. "I had a special herbal tea. My husband's colleague makes it for me. Ginger and raspberry leaf, I think." Dr. Sharma's professional smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Raspberry leaf tea is generally recommended for the third trimester to help tone the uterus for labor. Taking it too early, especially in concentrated amounts, can sometimes induce premature contractions. I would advise discontinuing it immediately. Adrian frowned. Isabel said it was perfectly safe. She checked with a top herbalist. "Perhaps," Dr. Sharma said diplomatically, "but every pregnancy is different. For now, let's stick to water and simple balanced meals. No more special blends, all right?" Celia nodded, a strange coldness spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the hospital air conditioning. It was a warning, a small, quiet bell tolling in the back of her mind. Later that evening, after Adrian had reluctantly left for his dinner, "I have to show face, darling, for the brand." Isabel appeared at the hospital, a bouquet of pristine white lilies in her arms. "I am so sorry, Celia," she said, her voice laced with what sounded like genuine distress. "I came as soon as I heard. I feel absolutely dreadful. If it was the tea—" "The doctor said to stop drinking it," Celia said, her voice flat. The cloying scent of the lilies was making her feel nauseous again. "Of course, I'll throw the whole batch out. I would never, ever do anything to harm you or the baby. You must believe me." Isabel's eyes were wide and earnest. She leaned in, placing a cool hand on Celia's arm. Adrian was beside himself. We all were. The word hung in the air. Celia looked at Isabel's perfectly composed face, her flawless makeup, the subtle glint of her Cartier bracelet. There wasn't a hint of a flaw in the performance. It was perfect. Too perfect. Celia had spent her early years working part-time in her aunt's small-town antique shop. She'd developed an eye for fakes. She could spot the subtle tells, the modern screw in a Georgian chest, the synthetic gloss on a supposedly Victorian vase. And looking at Isabel now, she saw the same thing. A perfect, beautiful forgery. "Thank you for the flowers, Isabel," Celia said, forcing a weak smile. "They're lovely." As soon as Isabel left, Celia buzzed for the nurse. "Could you please take these away?" she asked, gesturing to the lilies. "The smell is a bit strong for me." She lay back against the pillows, her hand resting protectively over her belly. The doctor had said it was an accident. Adrian believed it was an accident. But Celia knew, with a sudden, chilling certainty, that it was not. The cramp had not been a random spasm of her body. It had been an attack. The tea was not a gesture of kindness. It was a weapon? And the war for the Lowell Empire and for the life of her unborn child had just begun. She just didn't know it yet. The return home was suffocating. The Mayfair townhouse, once a symbol of her fairy tale life, now felt like a pristine, soundproofed prison. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Every whisper of the ventilation system sounded like a lie. Adrian, in an uncharacteristic display of attentiveness, had ordered her on bed rest for a week. He hired a private nurse and had all her meals catered from a Michelin-starred restaurant known for its organic, pregnancy-safe cuisine. It was a gilded cage, now with reinforced bars of concern. Isabel was conspicuously absent, which was a relief. Adrian explained she was giving Celia space and was devastated by what had happened. He recounted how Isabel had cried in his office, offering to resign. "Of course I told her not to be ridiculous," Adrian had said, fluffing Celia's pillows. "It was an honest mistake. The woman adores you." Celia just smiled weakly and said nothing. The bell of suspicion, once rung, could not be unrung. It echoed in the silence, growing louder with each passing day. She started to observe, to listen, to piece together the fragments of a puzzle she hadn't even known she was a part of. Her first concrete step was deceptively simple. The morning of her discharge, while the nurse was busy organizing her medication, Celia had crept into the kitchen. The elegant canister where Isabel kept the special blend was still on the counter. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she spooned a small amount of the dried, fragrant leaves into a Ziploc bag and hid it in the pocket of her dressing gown. Back in her room, she tucked it deep inside a winter boot at the back of her walk-in wardrobe. It was a small act of rebellion, a secret kept just for herself. Her bed rest became a period of covert reconnaissance. She feigned sleep when Adrian took calls in the room, her ears straining to catch snippets of his conversations. Most were about business, yields, acquisitions, hostile takeovers. But there were other calls, ones where his voice would soften, becoming low and intimate. He always used a single name. Izzy. "Izzy, not now. She's in the next room." "Yes, I know. We'll talk later. Be patient." Patience for what? The word sent a chill down Celia's spine. She started paying attention to the household's digital footprint. Adrian, a technophile, had networked the entire house. One evening, feigning a desire to catch up on some reading, she asked for her tablet. Adrian, pleased by her seeming return to normalcy, handed it over without a second thought. He didn't know that Celia, the daughter of a software engineer, had a better-than-average understanding of technology. She had set up their home Wi-Fi network herself when they first moved in, a detail Adrian had long since forgotten. She still had administrator access, That night, with Adrian sleeping soundly beside her, Celia logged into the router's admin panel. With a few clicks, she set up a discreet packet sniffer, routing copies of all data from Adrian's and Isabel's known devices to a secure encrypted cloud storage account she'd created under a false name. It was a massive invasion of privacy, a line she never thought she would cross. But she was no longer the naive girl from Kent. She was a mother protecting her child. The first few days yielded nothing but business emails and social media notifications. But then, she found it. A secondary messaging app on Adrian's phone, one he used exclusively with one contact, Isabel. The message history didn't go back far. They were careful, deleting things regularly. But what was there was damning. Izzy, is she still suspicious? Adrian, no, she's bought the whole overwrought and hormonal story. She's fragile. Izzy, fragile is good, but the doctor telling her to stop the tea has ruined the plan. It was working so well. The spotting last week proved it. Adrian, patience. We can't rush this. One more accident would look deliberate. We let things cool down. Izzy, I don't have patience, Aid. I've waited years. That baby cements her place. My place is by your side, running the company, not hers. Adrian, and it will be. I promise. Just let me handle Celia. Once the baby is born, her position will be different. Postpartum depression is a terrible thing. So easy for a mother to lose her grip. So easy for a loving husband to take control. For the good of the child, of course. Celia felt the blood drain from her face. The tablet slipped from her trembling hands, landing silently on the duvet. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just an attempt to cause a miscarriage. It was a long, calculated plan to dispose of her. To have her declared an unfit mother and institutionalized, leaving Adrian, the grieving, heroic single father, free to be with Isabel. The spotting last week, which she had tearfully confessed to Adrian and he had dismissed as normal, was part of their experiment. The tea hadn't been meant for a single, dramatic event. It was a slow, cumulative poison designed to weaken her body, destabilize her pregnancy, and culminate in a tragic, late-term loss or a breakdown after the birth. The severe cramping had been an overdose, a miscalculation on Isabel's part, an impatient move, a wave of nausea, far worse than any morning sickness, roiled in her stomach. She choked it back, forcing herself to breathe. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. They thought she was fragile. They thought she was weak. That was her only advantage. She needed help. Not a doctor or a policeman. They would want proof. And this conspiracy was woven from whispers and digital ghosts. She needed someone who would believe her without question. Someone who understood the battlefield of betrayal. She thought of Lena Petrova, her best friend from university. They had been inseparable. Celia, the dreamy architecture student, Lena, the fiercely intelligent law student. While Celia's life had taken a turn into the stratosphere of wealth, Lena had climbed a different ladder, becoming one of London's most feared and respected divorce lawyers, a shark in a silk blouse. They hadn't spoken as much since Celia's marriage. Adrian had a subtle way of isolating her from her old, less prestigious connections. Celia waited until the next afternoon, when Adrian was at a board meeting and the nurse was on her lunch break. She used a cheap burner phone she'd ordered online and had delivered to a local coffee shop, picking it up on her one supervised fresh air walk. Lena Petrova, a crisp, no-nonsense voice answered. Lena, it's me, it's Celia. There was a pause. Celia, my God, it's been a long time. Are you okay? You sound strange. Tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed began to stream down her face. No, she whispered, the single word carrying the weight of her entire shattered world. I'm not okay. I'm in trouble. Terrible trouble. Where are you? Talk to me. Celia told her everything. The tea, the hospital, the intercepted messages, the horrifying plan. She spoke in a low, urgent whisper, terrified of being overheard. Lena listened without interruption, her silence a comforting, solid presence on the other end of the line. When Celia finished, her voice raw with tears and fear, Lena's response was not one of shock or disbelief. It was cold, hard fury. "That bastard!" Lena hissed. "That manipulative, silver-tongued bastard! And her!" "Okay, listen to me, Celia. Do not confront him. Do not let them know you know anything. You are right. Your fragility is your shield right now. We need to get you out of there." "Out? But where would I go? He'd find me in an hour." "He won't," Lena said, her voice already shifting into strategic mode. "Because he'll be looking for the wrong person. He's expecting a hysterical, heartbroken wife to run to her parents in Kent. We're not going to give him that. We're going to make you a ghost." The plan Lena outlined was audacious. It involved a level of subterfuge Celia could barely comprehend. It was a plan born of a legal mind used to fighting dirty, to thinking 10 steps ahead of the opposition. First, the proof. Celia sent Lena the Ziploc bag of herbs via a secure courier, along with a water sample from the mug she'd pretended to drink from that morning, which she'd secretly refilled. Lena had a private lab she used for contentious divorce cases that could test for esoteric substances without leaving a paper trail. Second, the escape. Lena instructed her to start playing the part. "Be the person they expect you to be," Lena coached her over their encrypted calls. "Be a little sad, a little distant. Blame it on hormones. Tell Adrian you feel smothered and want to go visit your parents for a weekend. Just you. To reconnect with your roots before the baby comes." It worked. Adrian, seeing her subdued behavior as proof of her fragility and a sign of her pulling away, agreed. He likely saw it as the first step in her eventual emotional decline. He booked her a first-class train ticket to Kent for the upcoming Friday. He would have his driver take her to Paddington Station. The day before she was due to leave, Lena called with the lab results. "It's lily of the valley," Lena said, her voice grim. "Specifically, trace amounts of convalitoxin. It's a cardiotoxic glycoside. In small, repeated doses, it causes digestive distress, headaches, blurred vision, and eventually uterine contractions and cardiac arrhythmia. It's incredibly difficult to detect in standard toxicology screens. It mimics the symptoms of a high-risk pregnancy. Your friend Isabel wasn't just trying to make you miscarry, Celia. She was playing doctor with a poisoner's handbook. This is attempted murder." Hearing it confirmed sent a tremor through Celia's body, but it was a tremor of validation, not fear. The paranoia was gone, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. Friday arrived. Celia packed a small weekend bag, mostly with old clothes she no longer wore. She wrote a note, one that Lena had helped her craft. It was a masterpiece of emotional misdirection. "Adrian, I need some time. Everything feels so overwhelming. The house, the city, the pressure. I feel like I'm losing myself. I'm going to my parents. But I need to be alone for a bit first, to think. Please don't try to find me. I'll call when I'm ready. I love you." Celia, the "I love you" was the most difficult part to write. Adrian's driver, a stoic man named Frank, dropped her at the bustling entrance to Paddington Station. "Mr. Lowell said to call him when you're safely on the train, ma'am," Frank said. "I will, thank you, Frank." As soon as his car disappeared into the London traffic, Celia turned and walked in the opposite direction. She pulled her scarf up, put on a pair of sunglasses, and melted into the crowd. She walked for 10 blocks, taking random turns before ducking into a busy Starbucks. In the bathroom, she changed into a drab gray tracksuit, bundled her chic coat and designer handbag into a canvas tote bag, and scraped her hair back into a messy bun. She emerged a different woman, anonymous, unremarkable. She took the tube to Victoria Coach Station. There, blending in with students and backpackers, she paid cash for a ticket to a place she'd only ever seen in pictures, a remote coastal village in Cornwall. As the coach pulled away from the station, leaving the glittering, toxic city behind, Celia sent one last text from her burner phone to Lena. "The ghost is gone. She then switched the phone off, broke the SIM card in two, and dropped the pieces into an empty, crisp packet. Looking out the window, she watched her old life recede until it was nothing more than a memory. She was terrified, pregnant, and utterly alone. But for the first time in years, she was free. The cottage sat nestled in a cove near the village of Zennor, a jagged slash of granite and gorse on the Cornish coast. It was small, weathered by salt and wind, and belonged to a former client of Lena's, a reclusive artist who was spending a year in Japan and was happy to have a quiet tenant. There was no internet, and the phone line was dead. It was a digital black hole, the perfect place for a ghost to hide. The first week was a blur of sleep and sickness. The lingering effects of the convalatoxin, combined with the immense psychological stress, left Celia drained. The raw, primal beauty of the landscape was both a comfort and a terror. The crashing waves and the shrieking gulls echoed the tempest inside her. She would spend hours just sitting on the cold stone porch, her hand on her belly, feeling the tiny flutters of life within. That steady, gentle rhythm was her anchor in a world that had come unmoored. This was not just a retreat. It was a crucible. The soft, accommodating woman who had been Mrs. Adrian Lowell was being burned away, layer by layer. What was left was Celia Arden, the girl who had won a national scholarship for her architectural designs, the girl who had meticulously catalogued her aunt's antiques, the girl who understood structure, detail, and the critical importance of a solid foundation. Her rage, when it finally surfaced, was not a hot, explosive thing. It was a cold, quiet fire, banked deep within her. It didn't demand screams. It demanded a blueprint. Lena drove down on the second weekend, bringing supplies, a new secure laptop, and a mountain of legal documents. She found Celia not crying, but sketching in a notebook, the cottage's small table covered in drawings. "What's this?" Lena asked, picking up a detailed floor plan. "The Lowell Tower," Celia said, her voice steady. "Adrian's flagship project, his legacy. I did the initial concept designs for the residential floors, before he decided I was better suited to picking out cutlery patterns." Lena looked from the drawing to her friend's face. The victim was gone. In her place was a strategist. "I see," Lena said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. "You're not just hiding. You're building a war room." "He built an empire on lies," Celia said, her gaze fixed on the endless gray sea. "I'm going to deconstruct it, piece by piece. I know where all the weaknesses are, not just in his business, but in him." Their strategy was twofold, a pincer movement designed to attack Adrian on the two fronts he cared about most, his wealth and his reputation. The financial assault? Celia, with her intimate knowledge of the Lowell Tower project, became Lena's secret weapon. She remembered late-night conversations, offhand remarks Adrian had made, and details from blueprints she wasn't supposed to have seen. "The foundation," Celia explained, pointing to a cross-section she had drawn from memory. "He saved money by using a cheaper composite in the sub-basement pilings. He signed off on a supplier, a company called Gio Stabilo, against the advice of his structural engineer. He said the engineer was being overly cautious. But I looked into them at the time. Gio Stabilo has shell corporations leading back to a holding company in the Caymans, a company Adrian secretly controls." Lena's eyes lit up. "He's paying himself for substandard materials for his own building? That's not just cutting corners. That's massive, prosecutable fraud." "He's arrogant," Celia said. "He thinks he's untouchable." Working through encrypted channels, Lena hired a forensic accountant and a discreet private investigator. They fed them the information, a breadcrumb trail that led from London to the Caribbean. The goal wasn't to go to the police yet. It was to gather an arsenal of irrefutable evidence. The reputational assault. This was Celia's domain. She understood the delicate ecosystem of Adrian's world. It wasn't just about money. It was about the perception of power, the Lowell name, the legacy. And the gatekeeper of that legacy was not Adrian, but his formidable mother, Beatrice Lowell. Beatrice was old money aristocracy, a woman who viewed Isabel Vance as an ambitious upstart and had only ever tolerated Celia as the pretty, placid vessel for the next Lowell heir. She valued dignity, tradition, and above all, the untarnished family name. Beatrice despises scandal, Celia told Lena. She wouldn't care if Adrian had a dozen affairs, but she would burn the world down if she thought someone was threatening the Lowell legacy. And Isabel isn't just a mistress, she's a threat. Celia crafted an anonymous letter. It was a work of art, written on expensive watermarked paper she ordered online, using a typeface that mimicked the classic Lowell brand font. It was sent not to Beatrice's home, but to her solicitor's office, ensuring it would be taken seriously. The letter didn't accuse Adrian of anything directly. Instead, it painted a picture of a loyal employee, Isabel Vance, who had become dangerously obsessed. It hinted at her unstable ambition and her reckless influence over the Canary Wharf project. It mentioned her questionable family background, a detail Celia remembered Adrian once mocking, and her desperation to secure a permanent place in the company. The masterstroke was the final paragraph. Her singular focus on Mr. Lowell has made her a liability. It is our concern that her actions, if left unchecked, could bring irreparable harm not only to the company's finances, but to the Lowell family's public standing. She poses a direct threat to the stability of his marriage and the security of his unborn heir. It was designed to press every one of Beatrice's buttons: class snobbery, fear of scandal, and her primal instinct to protect the family line. It positioned Celia not as a problem, but as a victim whose stability was integral to the Lowell succession. While the seeds of doubt were being sown in London, Celia focused on herself. She found a local GP in a nearby town, Dr. Evans, creating a plausible backstory of a writer seeking solitude to finish a novel. She ate well, walked for miles along the coastal paths, and read voraciously, not fiction, but books on corporate law, finance, and psychological warfare. The baby grew, and with it, her resolve. She was no longer just fighting for survival. She was fighting for a future she would build herself, for her and her child. The updates from Lena were sporadic, but potent. The PI had confirmed the Cayman Islands connection. The forensic accountant was building a case file that could put Adrian and his cronies away for years, and Beatrice Lowell, after receiving the letter, had started making quiet inquiries. She had lunch with two of the company's non-executive directors. She made an unscheduled visit to the Lowell Tower construction site. She was sniffing the air, sensing smoke. Adrian, meanwhile, was growing frantic. His initial annoyance at Celia's stunt had morphed into genuine panic. He had, as Lena predicted, focused all his resources on Kent, checking her parents' house, her old friends, her past haunts. He'd hired private investigators of his own, but they were looking for a scared, pregnant woman. They weren't looking for a ghost. The lack of any digital footprint was maddening for him. He was a man who believed everything could be tracked, bought, or controlled. Celia's complete disappearance was a terrifying anomaly. His messages to Isabel, which Celia still monitored through the router data Lena was forwarding, became more and more agitated. Adrian. Still nothing. It's like she vanished from the face of the earth. My mother is asking questions. This is a disaster. Izzy. Let her run. She'll crawl back when the money runs out. She's weak. Adrian. You don't understand my mother. She smells weakness, and right now, she's looking at you. Your tea plan was reckless. This whole mess started there. Izzy. My plan? Don't you dare lay this at my feet, Aid. You were the one who wanted her gone. I was just providing a solution. The cracks in their alliance were beginning to show. They were turning on each other, just as Celia had known they would. Their partnership was built on greed and ambition, a foundation as faulty as the one under the Lowell Tower. 3 months after she disappeared, Celia stood on the cliff edge, the wind whipping her hair. She was now visibly, heavily pregnant. She felt strong, powerful. The sea below crashed against the rocks with relentless force, not destroying them, but shaping them. She felt like that cliff, battered, but unbreakable. She called Lena. "It's time," she said. "He thinks I'm gone. He thinks I'm weak. He thinks he's won. Let's show him what a fragile woman can do." The plan for her return was set. It wouldn't be a quiet reappearance. It would be a detonation set to go off in the one place Adrian felt most invincible, the annual Lowell Foundation Gala, a glittering affair designed to showcase his philanthropy and cement his status among London's elite. It was in 1 week. Celia Arden Lowell was coming home, and she was bringing the storm with her. The Lowell Foundation Gala was the jewel in Adrian's corporate crown, held in the soaring atrium of the V&A Museum. It was a night of performative charity and blatant networking, where the champagne was vintage and the smiles were investments. For Adrian, it was the ultimate display of his power, a carefully stage-managed event where he was the benevolent king. This year, it was also meant to be a show of stability, a way to quell the whispers that had begun to circulate in his absence of a wife. He stood near the grand entrance, a portrait of suave composure in a Tom Ford tuxedo, with Isabel at his side. She was breathtaking in a crimson gown, a slash of defiant color in the sophisticated crowd. To the casual observer, they were a power couple. But beneath the surface, the tension between them was a high-strung wire. Beatrice Lowell had been cold and distant for weeks, and a prominent financial journalist, tipped off by Lena's team, had been asking uncomfortable questions about the tower's construction materials. The evening was proceeding as planned when a subtle shift occurred at the entrance. The murmur of conversation faltered. Heads began to turn. A collective, silent gasp seemed to ripple through the atrium. Adrian turned, annoyed at the disruption, and then he saw her. It was Celia, but it was not the Celia he knew. The timid, gentle woman who dressed in soft pastels was gone. This woman stood tall and poised, her pregnancy not a vulnerability, but a statement of power. She wore a simple, elegant gown of deep sapphire silk that hugged her 8-month belly, her hair styled in a severe, chic chignon. Her face was pale, but her eyes, when they met his across the crowded room, burned with an intensity he had never seen before. She looked like a queen returning to claim her throne. Beside her stood Lena Petrova, exuding an aura of lethal competence in a black power suit. For a moment, the world stopped. Adrian felt the blood drain from his face. He could hear Isabel's sharp intake of breath beside him. He saw his mother, Beatrice, across the room, her expression unreadable as she watched the scene unfold. Celia didn't rush towards him. She didn't cry or scream. She simply began to walk, slowly and deliberately, through the parted crowd. People stepped back as if she were royalty, their faces a mixture of shock, pity, and rapt attention. The silence was absolute, broken only by the soft click of her heels on the marble floor. She stopped a few feet from Adrian and Isabel. "Hello, Adrian," she said, her voice calm and clear, carrying easily in the hushed space. "You're looking well." "Celia," he finally managed to say, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Where have you been? I've been worried sick." A faint, mirthless smile touched Celia's lips. "Have you? I've just been preparing." It was then that Lena Petrova stepped forward. She held a thick leather folio. "Adrian Lowell," she said, her voice sharp and formal. "You are being served." She opened the folio and handed him the top document. The words were visible even from a few feet away. Petition for divorce. Attached to it was a restraining order, citing credible threats of physical harm and extreme emotional distress. Adrian stared at the papers as if they were venomous snakes. "This is absurd," he stammered, looking around at the sea of faces watching him. "My wife is clearly unwell. She's been under a lot of stress." "Oh, I'm perfectly well, Adrian," Celia interrupted, her voice cutting through his pathetic defense. In fact, I've never been clearer in my life. For example, I'm clear on the fact that my stress was being caused by the convalitoxin your mistress was feeding me in my morning tea. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Isabel turned ghost white. "That is a slanderous lie!" Isabel spat, finding her voice. "She's hysterical!" "Is it?" Lena countered, coolly. "Because we have a full toxicology report from a private lab, and we have the remainder of your special blend, which, as it turns out, is rich in lily of the valley. A plant, I believe, you had specially cultivated in the greenhouse of your country home?" Isabel's composure finally shattered. Her eyes darted around wildly, looking for an escape. "Adrian, do something! Don't let her say these things!" But Adrian was frozen, trapped in the nightmare he had created. His world was collapsing in real time, in front of everyone who mattered. And then the final blows began to land. On the large screens around the atrium, which had been displaying images of the Foundation's charitable work, the feed suddenly changed. A news alert from a major financial network appeared. The headline was devastating. "Lowell Tower halted. Sources reveal fraud, substandard materials in flagship project. Founder Adrian Lowell under investigation." Adrian's head snapped towards the screen, his face a mask of horror. This wasn't just a marital dispute anymore. This was the complete and utter ruin of his professional life. As if on cue, a new figure entered the circle of drama. Beatrice Lowell, her face like a thundercloud, glided towards them. She ignored her son completely. Her glacial eyes fixed on Isabel. "I believe your employment with the Lowell Corporation is terminated, effective immediately," Beatrice said, her voice dripping with ice. "Security will escort you from the premises. I suggest you find a very good lawyer. You will need one." "You can't do this!" Isabel shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. She turned to Adrian, grabbing his arm. "Ade, tell her. Tell her she can't do this to me, to us." Adrian looked from Isabel's frantic, unraveling face to Celia's calm, resolute one. He looked at the ruin of his reputation on the screens, at the disdain on his mother's face. In that single, horrifying moment, he saw the full, catastrophic consequences of his choices. He had underestimated Celia. He had mistaken her kindness for weakness, her love for pliability. He had tried to break her, and instead, she had been forged into something unbreakable. He pulled his arm away from Isabel's grasp. He said nothing. His silence was the most profound betrayal of all for Isabel, and she finally broke. "He knew!" she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at Adrian, her face contorted with rage and tears. "It was his idea. He wanted her gone. He wanted the baby gone. He told me to be patient. He was in on all of it." Her confession, raw and hysterical, echoed through the vast, silent hall. It was the final nail in the coffin. Beatrice Lowell nodded grimly, as if her worst fears had been confirmed. She looked at Celia, not with warmth, but with a new, grudging respect. "Mrs. Arden Lowell," she said, the formal address a clear statement of allegiance. "Perhaps you and I should have a conversation. In private." Celia gave a slight nod. She cast one last look at the wreckage of the man she had once loved. Adrian stood alone in the center of the room, the divorce papers dangling from his hand, his face ashen. He wasn't the charismatic millionaire anymore. He was just a man, stripped bare of his power, his secrets laid out for the world to see. He looked stunned, utterly and completely broken by the woman he had so grievously wronged. As Lena gently guided Celia away from the scene, she felt a quiet, final release. It wasn't triumph she felt, or even vengeance. It was the profound, peaceful calm of justice. She hadn't just exposed a liar and a poisoner. She had reclaimed her life, her name, and her future, all on her own terms. The comeback was complete. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. The Lowell Gala became the society scandal of the decade. Isabel Vance was arrested the next day, her hysterical confession at the V&A providing more than enough probable cause for the police. Faced with the lab reports and mounting evidence, she eventually pled guilty to assault and administering a poison, receiving a lengthy prison sentence. Her fall from grace was brutal and absolute. For Adrian, the punishment was a different kind of death. It was the slow, meticulous dismantling of his life. The fraud investigation into Lowell Corporation eviscerated his business. He was forced to step down as CEO, his name becoming synonymous with corruption and scandal. The Lowell Tower, his monument to his own ego, stood as a half-finished skeleton, a testament to his hubris. The divorce was swift and punishing. With Lena's expert guidance and the mountain of evidence, Celia received a settlement that was staggering, not that she needed it. Beatrice, in a move to salvage the family name and secure the future of her grandchild, had already signed over a significant portion of the Lowell family's old money assets to a trust in Celia's and the baby's name. Adrian lost his company, his reputation, and a vast portion of his fortune. But his true loss, the one that haunted him in the hollowed-out silence of his now empty Mayfair townhouse, was Celia. He replayed that night at the gala endlessly in his mind. Her strength, her poise, her utter lack of fear. He had created that woman. His betrayal had been the furnace, and she had emerged as steel. The love he'd felt for her, a selfish, possessive thing, transformed in its absence into a profound, aching respect for what he had thrown away. 6 months later, Celia gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl. She named her Hope. She did not stay in London. The city was a graveyard of memories. With her newfound independence and resources, she returned to her first love, architecture. But not the cold corporate architecture of Adrian's world. She moved to Bath, the city of elegant stone and healing waters, and established the Arden Foundation. Its mission was to design and build beautiful, sustainable, and affordable housing for vulnerable families, particularly single mothers. Her firm, Arden Design, quickly became a celebrated name in ethical architecture. She wasn't a millionaire's wife anymore. She was Celia Arden, a founder, a philanthropist, an innovator, and a mother. Her life was full, not with designer clothes and society parties, but with purpose, laughter, and the gurgling sounds of her daughter. One crisp autumn afternoon, a year after the gala, Celia was reviewing blueprints in her sunlit office, which overlooked a park. Hope was playing on a mat nearby, stacking colorful wooden blocks. A package was delivered to her office. There was no return address, but she recognized the courier service as one Adrian used to favor. Inside was a simple, handcrafted wooden music box. When she opened it, it played a soft, gentle lullaby. Tucked inside was a single sheet of heavy cream paper. The letter was handwritten, the once bold, arrogant script now hesitant, almost humbled. Celia, there are no words to express the depth of my regret. Sorry is a hollow, meaningless word for what I did to you. I don't write this asking for your forgiveness. I know I have no right to it, and I will never receive it. I don't deserve it. I write this only to say that I understand now. I see what I lost. Not the money, or the company, but you. Your goodness, your strength, your light. I tried to extinguish it because I was afraid of it, because it showed me my own emptiness. I know you will teach our daughter to be strong, to be kind, to be everything that I was not. This is a small token, not a gift from me, but a gift for her. I will not try to be a part of your lives. My only act of redemption can be to stay away, to allow you the peace you have so bravely earned. Know that somewhere in the world, there is a man who is trying to learn how to be better, because you showed him how truly broken he was. Adrian. Celia read the letter, her expression unreadable. She felt no anger, no satisfaction. The raging fire had long since cooled, leaving behind not a barren wasteland, but fertile ground for a new life. She closed the music box and placed it on a high shelf. Perhaps one day, when hope was old enough, she would tell her the story. The story of a mother's strength, of betrayal and rebirth. She looked out the window at the children playing in the park, then down at her own daughter, who had just managed to place a final block on her wobbly tower. Clapping her hands in delight, Celia smiled. A genuine, peaceful smile. She hadn't just survived. She hadn't just gotten her comeback. She had built a new world from the ashes of the old one. A world founded not on wealth or power, but on something far more resilient. Hope. Celia's story is a powerful reminder that the deepest betrayals can forge the greatest strengths. She didn't just expose a liar. She dismantled an empire built on secrets and rediscovered her own power in the process. Her comeback wasn't about revenge. It was about redemption. Not for him, but for herself. It shows that your greatest asset is not what you have, but who you are, and that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to redesign our own future. What did you think of Celia's incredible transformation? Could you ever forgive a betrayal like that? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing your perspectives on these complex stories. If this story moved you, please give this video a like, share it with someone who loves a powerful tale of resilience, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more true-to-life emotional dramas every week. Thank you for watching.